Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station, KHTS FM 98.1 and AM 1220. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Jerry Cook. Let me just quickly give a quick shameless plug, if I may, right here at the top of the hour. If you are looking for a church where woke Christianity goes to die, then look no further than Freedom's Way Baptist Church. You can find us online at freedomswaybaptistchurch.org, and that is freedoms with an S. Also, if you're looking for a school, pre-K through kindergarten, where your children will be educated and not indoctrinated, then I would encourage you to give Lighthouse Christian Academy a try and a call. Lighthouse, of course, is a ministry of our church, Freedom's Way Baptist Church, and you can find Lighthouse Christian Academy and the link to the page on freedomswaybaptistchurch.org. And so I encourage you to, if you're either looking for a church or looking for a school for your kids, give Freedom's Way Baptist Church and Lighthouse Christian Academy a try. We have a great show for you today. At the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by Congressman Mike Garcia, who will be calling in to talk about the saga of electing a new House Speaker and the ongoing battle between Israel and Hamas. Now, our original conversation was talking about the saga itself, which of course is entering now in its third week of trying to find a Republican replacement for Kevin McCarthy. But history has been made today. After the ouster of Kevin McCarthy almost 3 weeks ago and 3 weeks of not having a speaker, with all kinds of important things happening on the legislative agenda here in the next week or two, we finally have a House Speaker, and that is Representative Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana. We'll talk to Congressman Garcia about that choice in a little bit. By the way, it was a unanimous vote. I believe that Mike Johnson got 220, and so there were no abstentions. Nobody voted for anybody else. And so I think with the fact that it was unanimous, and what I heard from the new House Speaker on the Senate, on the House floor, I should say, when he was addressing his colleagues, he sounded great. Now, I don't know a whole bunch about Mike Johnson, but what I do know is very impressive. I know that he's a Christian. I know that he is unashamedly conservative, and I know that he is a very measured individual. We'll have a little clip to play to give you a little flavor of Mike Johnson a little bit later when we introduce Congressman Garcia. But I know a lot of people for the last 3 weeks, especially on my side of the aisle, have been a little, either irritated or upset or a little bit of both as to, what Matt Gaetz did in terms of ousting Kevin McCarthy. And again, whether you like the ouster or not, here we are with a new House Speaker, and I'm just going to be the first one to say it here at KHTS. I believe that Mike Johnson is probably a more conservative House Speaker than Kevin McCarthy. And I think, and by God's grace, I hope I'm right, I think he's going to be able to get a lot done for the conservative cause and for the cause of America going forward. And so he's already being labeled as the MAGA speaker by those on the left. And of course, it doesn't matter who became speaker, they're going to attach that MAGA label to them as much as possible, because for some reason they think MAGA is the albatross around the neck of some of these guys. And I guess it really depends on who you talk to. So we'll talk more about the election, the choosing of House Speaker Mike Johnson with Congressman Garcia in a little bit. Now, first, I want to talk a little bit about an opportunity that some of you that are listening today are able to take part in next Wednesday at the William S. Hart School District at 7 p.m. Actually, I think it's 6:30 p.m., but 7 p.m., 6:30 p.m. Check it out on Facebook. But let me just start by saying, let's stop talking about change and let's be the change for a change. Last week, we had Karen Frost with Moms of Liberty on, and we talked about emailing our local Hart School Board members in regards to taking up parental notification on their school agenda. Well, I am glad to report that your emails were not sent in vain. And by the way, if you did send emails, thank you very much for doing that. If you haven't sent an email and you had full access to the emails, why? Why didn't you send them? Don't complain about what is happening in our culture, in our community, in our country, if you don't want to take the little effort of sending out an email by typing up a few things and pressing send. Folks, it's very simple. But we had Karen Frost on with Moms for Liberty, and next Wednesday, November 1st at 6:30 p.m., we are encouraging all of you to show up en masse at the Hart School Board meeting, as they will be including parental notifications on their agenda item. Now, what does this mean? This means that secrets should not be kept from parents in regards to their children's health and their children's mental well-being. I don't think this should be something I need to tell you, but unfortunately, we're in a time in our country where I need to say this, but parents are better at raising their children and addressing their children's needs, whatever those needs might be, than teachers are. For heaven's sakes, teachers need to focus on reading, they need to focus on writing, they need to focus on arithmetic. And by the way, just on a side note here, not to get a little bit on a sidetrack, but some of you probably have read that the State Board of Education in Oregon has just voted that those three things should not be mandatory in high school because of equity or something. But anyway, look it up. It's just absolutely silly. But anyway, here's my point. Not strong-arming or cajoling our young people to identify a certain way through emotional manipulation or what have you. That, I think, is what is happening in a lot of our schools across the nation. Is I think we're having teachers who are strong-arming, we have teachers who are cajoling, and they are doing this to young people at a very young age who have a very young mind that is not totally fully formed. And folks, listen, you can convince a child about Santa Claus. And it's very possible you can convince Sam that he is Samantha, and you can convince Samantha that she is Sam. Children are very, very impressionable and very malleable, unfortunately. By the way, let me just make this very clear to you out there that are listening. The progressive left, in terms of this topic, is engaged. They are going to be present next week at the Hart Board meeting. And I want to make sure that righteousness prevails over unrighteousness. This means that the righteous right must be equally, if not more, engaged than the progressives are. Folks, we are standing up for what is right, for what is sane, for what is natural. We are standing up for the natural order of things, not the way the left wants things to be, or the way the left wants us to think things have always been, but we've just been blinded to it. But we, the righteous right, must be equally, if not more, engaged than the progressives are, and they are going to be there en masse. And I am encouraging you folks to step up your game. Bring some of your young people as well, because they need to see how the other side reacts and acts. Folks, if we cannot rally around our children, and if we cannot rally around the fact of parenting and the well-being of our children at school and in home, then pray tell, what can we rally around? This issue of parenting should not be political. But the progressive left has made it both political and crucial in their fight to assert leftist policies. But again, parenting should not be left or it should not be a right issue. It should be completely apolitical and nonpartisan. Folks, last time I checked, Democrats are parents, Republicans are parents, Christians are parents, atheists are parents. We're all parents. If we have kids, we're married, we're parents. This should not be a left issue or a right issue, but unfortunately, the left is attempting to frame the issue as a issue that is either right or left. But it should be completely apolitical and nonpartisan. But the progressives are going to politicize every issue because to many of them, politics is religion to them. Now listen closely to me. To the progressives out there who are antithetical to God, who are antithetical to Orthodox Christian Bible believers, to them, politics and the state is religion. When you do not believe in something, you will quite literally fall for anything. And many on the progressive left have deified government, made liberal legislation their scriptures, and have made certain politicians their patron saints. And if you want to see that in action, all you need to do is speak out against their form of governance or condemn their leftist legislation and speak out against their patron politicians, and you will see the kind of anger and vitriol that you would think you'd see from your worst enemies from another country. If you want to see and read firsthand what the progressive left thinks of Christians, and in particular, Moms for Liberty in particular, just head over to Santa Clarita Community on Facebook. Santa Clarita Community. Now, you think this would be just a general information site, but this Santa Clarita Community on Facebook is really a leftist Facebook site. And I want you to read in the comments section where three-time failed congressional candidate Christy Smith posted an ally alert highlighting our church's post. Yes, our church's, Freedom's Way Baptist Church. Out of the 185 comments, and that, by the way, is as of this morning, there could be more by now, many of them were directed either at Christians generally or at Moms for Liberty specifically. And let me make this clear. You need to show up this Wednesday, folks, November 1st, at the Hart School Board meeting. And let me tell you how you need to show up. If you are somebody who's planning on speaking, then you need to be there early. I would say get there between 5:45 and 6 o'clock, grab one of those cards, fill it out, and hand it in so you can be somebody who can speak. Now, you say, well, what should I say? You need to make your point. You need to be clear. You need to be concise, and you need to be cogent. And by the way, you do not need to devolve into criticizing or irritating the other side. The other side is already going to be there irritated. They are there already irritated. There's no reason for you to add fuel to the fire. If you are a Christian in particular, by the way, you should represent the Lord Jesus Christ in a stellar fashion, represent the church that you attend in a stellar fashion, and you are able and should be able to make your point in such a way that you don't have to criticize the other side. You say, well, they're going to criticize us. Who cares? We're not them at all. Folks, just being there, just Christian conservative patriots showing up is going to be enough to drive these guys nuts. In fact, they're already upset that we're going to show up and it's a week before the event. But I've got to make this clear. You need to show up. I don't want to read the day after on a Facebook post that, oh, I wish I could have been there, but I had this plan. Well, then unplan it now. Take care of it early. Do what you need to do. Get off work early. Grab the kids. Whatever you need to do, make the plans now and be there. If you're a church that's having Wednesday night services, I would encourage you to move them to Thursday night, or cancel services and move them to Thursday night. Why? Get your folks there. Make sure they can get there. It's crucial, folks. See, the left sees this. The left knows this. The left realizes that if they can just be louder than the other side, more critical than the other side, and kind of go after a few of the board members to try to somehow cajole them in their leftist ways to vote a certain way, see, they realize that there is strength in numbers, folks. And I'm telling you that if we, as conservative evangelical Christians, or just conservative-minded people in general, cannot be there for this issue, then, folks, checkmate. The leftists will win, and that's not a win for our community. That's not a win for our state. That's not a win for our children. It's not a win for our country. The great Edmund Burke said this: the only thing necessary for evil to triumph in the world is for good men to do nothing. This is not the time, folks, to sit on the sidelines. This is a time to get engaged, get involved, and bless God, stop complaining. We need to stop talking about change and for a change, actually be the change. That's next Wednesday, November 1st at William S. Hart School District. Be there. Follow it on Facebook, parental notification, SCV Patriots. It's all on there. Check it out. It's on my Facebook as well, at Jerry Cook. Check it out. Be there. When we come back on Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, we'll be joined on the line by your favorite congressman and mine, Mike Garcia, and talk about the speaker's race, and we'll be talking about Israel as well when we come back here on your hometown station. All right, we're back here live on your hometown station. This is Politics in the Pulpit with your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook. Good to have you joining us here at the bottom of the hour. We are also pleased to have on the line with us Congressman Mike Garcia from right here in the 27th Congressional District. Say hello out there, Congressman Garcia.
Hey, afternoon, Pastor. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I know that today has been a whirlwind of events there on the Hill, but I know that Congressman, that Kevin McCarthy is a friend of yours, and you both have worked closely over your time in office, but I want to just, before we talk about the election of the new speaker, just want to kind of go back a little bit in time. What was your initial reaction to Kevin's ouster, and in particular to the motion filed by your colleague Matt Gaetz from Florida?
Yeah, and I actually gave a floor speech in defense against this motion to vacate when we were debating this, which feels like a year ago now, but it was really only 3 weeks ago. And my point was, if regardless of what your issues are, we're operating with such a thin majority here that we can't be, trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if you want change in leadership, there's a better way to go about doing this. And frankly, we're only 6 or 7 months into this process of getting our commitment to America on the floor. We've been actually making great strides in that regard, and doing what he did, I compared it to running with scissors and not having a plan. And unfortunately, he was not only running with scissors, but we fell on them. And for 3 weeks now, we've been going through the dentistry of trying to just find someone to fill the role. Regardless of what people think about McCarthy's politics, he represented the full spectrum. He did keep the team going down range, and we could have done things a little faster. We could have done things a little bit, more conservative. But when you're dealing with 222 different personalities. There's limitations on what you can do and how fast you can go, and some of those same folks that wanted to go faster were actually preventing us from going faster. So it is what it is, but we've got a good speaker now in the form of Mike Johnson, who is a good friend of mine still. He and I have a lot of respect for each other. He's a good Christian, a strong believer from Louisiana. He's definitely a strong conservative. I don't think he's someone who would maybe get elected in California or in our district, but that's not his job. His job is not to represent our district. His job is to get the legislation moving on the floor and to fulfill this commitment to America and make sure that we operate as a meaningful check and balance to this very incompetent and dangerous executive branch right now. And that's what we're going to go do here.
So obviously, when Kevin McCarthy was ousted, the reaction automatically was Jim Jordan. Now, why do you think that he was unable to get to the magic number that Johnson was able to get to?
Yeah, a lot of it's personality dependent. A lot of it is past relationships dependent. And in Jim Jordan's case, I think it was something like 22 folks that couldn't get on board with him after 3 rounds. And I think that number was going up every time we voted on the floor that wouldn't support him. Some of them actually were just voting against him because they didn't want to reward the bad behavior of the Freedom Caucus, the far right folks who had basically, in some folks' opinions, had hijacked the process. So, but he is a firebrand. Jim Jordan is not only a pretty strong conservative, but he's been on the front lines of the national fights, and he's been leading the investigations into Biden. So he already has a giant bullseye on his back, and coming into the speakership role magnified that bullseye, and that spills over onto the conference as well. So some folks in swing districts weren't comfortable with that, and decided to vote against him. And my one of my best friends, who's like a brother to me, Jake Elsey, represents a district in a very red part of Texas, voted for me actually 3 times. So I had the honor of being formally nominated and voted on as Speaker of the House for 3 votes there.
Yeah, I texted you when that
running.
I texted you when that happened because I wanted,
Yeah.
I was trying to move the momentum for Mike Garcia. So
yeah, my vote count never went down, so I got that going for me. But
That's right.
Jake and I have known each other for 20 years. We flew together over Iraq in our F-18 squadron together, and he's been a wingman of mine for 2 decades, and that's why he did it. And he wasn't comfortable with Jim Jordan himself. So.
Well, now that we've got a Speaker of the House, and I did hear a little bit of his address to the House, and I was very impressed by much of what I heard, especially to all of his allusions to the Bible, to God, and I think all of that is positive and wonderful going forward. But now that we finally got a House Speaker, Congressman Mike Garcia, what are the legislative things that really need to get taken care of here in the short term that's going to give us some long-term positivity?
Well, I'll start kind of nearest alligator to the canoe to the furthest, and we'll look at the next 3 months. But we just passed a resolution condemning Hamas and committing to supporting Israel and their fight against this terrorist organization and the preservation of Israel as a nation. So that's very important. That was the first thing out of the gates. The next couple of things we're doing over the next few hours tonight, we're already debating the next appropriation bill. We have gotten about 75% of the budget passed on the floor, and then we got derailed with the motion to vacate. So we're going to finish that last 25% of appropriation bills. Hopefully get the government turned back on, and then hand a spending package to the Senate for them to start working on as well before we have what's called a continued resolution that expires on November 17th, where we basically face another government shutdown. So
right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right before Thanksgiving, which is a great forcing function for some. And for me, I'm willing to stay here until we get our work done. And it's God, country, family. And sometimes you got to make the sacrifices. And I'm blessed to have a family that understands the importance of what we're doing here. But, we've got to do as much as we can to honor that November 17th and avoid a government shutdown. And then, in the background, you've got the Senate and the White House trying to dump a $100 billion supplemental package in our lap, a giant turd, if you will, that includes $61 billion for Ukraine, has very little policy change for the border, but more money for Biden's border policies that aren't working right now. and then a chunk of money for Israel. So I'm fighting the fight to get that Israel funding decoupled from the rest of the package so that we can have a meaningful debate on Ukrainian funding. And I've published a comprehensive report on the questions we need to ask before we start, supporting and approving more money for Ukraine. But that conversation shouldn't slow down our support for Israel, which desperately needs to be reloaded with Iron Dome and David Sling munitions that we have and make. So,
well, I appreciate you bringing up the Ukraine funding because obviously I've got my fingers on the pulse of some of the folks here in your district, and I hear it all the time. But I want to pose this question to you and see what your thoughts are, Congressman. Um, what are your thoughts on the growing number of Republicans, both in elected office and in the party, generally speaking, who just are not comfortable or are not on board with all the Ukraine funding, or at least just the idea of handing a blank check? So what are your thoughts on that, Congressman?
It's a convergence of two or three things. And I actually wrote a 15-page document explaining what's going on here and why we need to ask these questions. And it explains why the erosion in support is there. One, you've got an executive branch in the form of the president and a secretary of defense who refuses to explain to the American people what is going on in Ukraine. The average American doesn't know what's going on in Ukraine. The average member of Congress doesn't know what's going on in Ukraine. I know what's going on, and it's not great. It's a stalemate at best because I'm actively searching for classified information and getting the briefs, right? So you've got that. You've got an executive branch that isn't trying to sell this to the American people, and it's literally, over $100 billion already, and now he's asking for $61 billion. So if you don't explain what the product is and what the ROI is, it's not going to get a warm hug. The second trend is that this war isn't going as well as it did the first, call it 6 to 9 months back in 2022, right? The Ukrainians clawed back a lot of their land. They fought back. They are in existence, and Zelensky's alive because of our initial investments. And so far in the last 6 to 9 months, it has become a quagmire, and the spring offensive didn't manifest into a victory like they were expecting. So what this does is it begs questions, and the more questions I ask, I've asked for a win strategy, an exit strategy. I've asked for the sanction enforcement, looking for a more aggressive sanction package, and I'll send you my document that outlines this. The White House is going to be reading this. The director of the agencies, defense and other agencies, have already started to review it. They have so far refused to answer these questions. And when you are asking for $300 million, which is what they asked for a couple weeks ago, and yet 117 Republicans vote no, which is more than half, imagine the amount of no votes that you're going to have when it's $61 billion and you're still not answering these questions. And so that's what's happening. And we owe it to the American taxpayers to do our due diligence. You wouldn't go buy anything, major costly item without doing your homework before plunking down that money. And we sure as heck shouldn't be spending $61 billion on a conflict. And to be honest, we all want Russia to lose. We all want Ukraine to prevail. I've spent most of my adult life training to kill Russians and fight Russians. And so I understand this mission, but we should not be paying for teachers' salaries in Ukraine. We should not be paying for humanitarian aid that isn't even going to Ukraine. We should be paying for the warheads that land on Russian foreheads and making sure that they win the war. And we need to know that the Ukrainians are going to follow our strategies and tactics that we recommend. And if they don't, then we need to hit pause. And so we need to right-size this. If we right-size it, answer the win strategy questions, and have an exit strategy, I think you'll see more Republicans get it back online. But it shouldn't be at the expense of our own border security. It can't be at the expense of fighting China and making sure that we're standing by Israel. And that seems to be the trend here, and this president is not communicating on it.
Warheads on foreheads. I'm going to have to put that right in the front of my Bible somewhere. So that was good.
That's how you win a war. That's how you win a war, especially against these Soviet legacy armies like what Russia's employing right now.
No doubt. Let's shift gears ever so slightly. You'd mentioned Israel there, and I appreciate that. What do you think, in your opinion, Congressman, is taking Israel so long to respond to Hamas with what was supposed to be a large-scale ground operation? Do you think America has kind of put the brakes on that? And you think the Biden administration has kind of put the brakes on that, or at least pressuring Israel to kind of put a halt on that? What are your thoughts on this large-scale potential ground attack?
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit of all of of the above. I think first of all, Israel is good at fighting wars, right? They try to avoid war through strength and deterrence. They have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to be a sovereign nation, and when they're attacked, they have a right to retaliate and fight back. And in this case, the deaths are a direct result of Hamas, and the deaths of both sides of the border are a result of Hamas's actions and their attacks. Israel is good at fighting wars. They're good at winning wars, and they're good at ending wars, and usually victoriously. So what they're being mindful of is a few things. One, they want to win, and this urban warfare that would be necessary on the ground to have a meaningful ground conflict requires you to do it correctly and not run with scissors, if you will, if I can use that metaphor again, and do it right. The second thing is that there is the world stage public opinion element here, and you're seeing people like Tlaib and AOC who just voted against this resolution to support Israel and condemn Hamas. There's a battle, a PR battle, if you will, that they have to be mindful of. So if you go too fast and you induce too much collateral damage, you kill too many civilians, they do risk losing support on the public stage for their counteroffensive efforts here. And they need to eradicate Hamas, take them down to bone fragments and amino acids, and minimize collateral damage while they do that, and not kill civilians to the max extent possible. But war, unfortunately, does come with collateral damage sometimes. But people need to remember that if in the event there is collateral damage, that's not Israel's fault. That's not the IDF's fault. That is the fault of Hamas, who started this and found out what the end result is. So there's also this social media phenomena with artificial intelligence and algorithms that are driving things. When you see that debate about who bombed the hospital, when it was clearly a rocket, a Hamas rocket in the Gaza Strip that impacted the hospital, and within 24 hours, half the planet was concerned that it was Israeli missiles that did it, and it was clear evidence that it wasn't. So you got to be really careful in this modern era with the public information and this artificial intelligence, social media, and on the PR front.
Yeah, the New York Times.
That's why they're doing it.
Yeah, the New York Times had some major egg on their face, as well as some other outlets concerning that. But just real quickly, Congressman, could you explain a little bit about this whole argument of proportionality? Obviously, from the left side of it, they always say, well, Israel's response to Hamas is not proportional to what Hamas did. Explain to the folks that proportionality doesn't mean that if Hamas takes out a house in Israel, that Israel can only respond by taking out a house in Gaza. Explain that, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a rule of war that says it can only be proportional. B, if you respond with symmetrical, proportion in terms of casualties and damage, what you're actually doing is perpetuating a war, and what you're actually doing is inspiring a future conflict. And in Israel's case, right, if people aren't familiar with the situation, go look at a map. They're surrounded by water on one side and people that want to kill them on the other side. And so when you are dealing with a region like the Gaza Strip, which is where Hamas is operating from in the south, and then Hezbollah to the north and out of Lebanon, and one of these entities literally attacks you, similar to Pearl Harbor or 9/11, all in one day at the levels that they did, if you come back with symmetrical and proportional response, what you're doing is guaranteeing this will happen again in the future. And Israel right now is in a position, and Netanyahu's been very clear about this, that they cannot allow Hamas to exist after this operation, and that needs to be the goal. And unfortunately, when you take a mission objective that is that far, it's going to come with significant losses on both sides of the ledger, and that mission objective will need to be achieved. So it's like in World War II, when if we were to abide by this notion of proportionality, we would not have used nuclear weapons. But in looking back at that asymmetric use of a nuclear weapon ended the war and ultimately saved millions, because we didn't fight another war or continue that war at the level that we were. So it's very important that you respond with overwhelming force. This is what strength, peace through strength looks like. And this is why you don't start wars with nations like Israel, because when you screw around, you find out really quickly what the operating end of the Israeli Defense Forces looks like, and it doesn't end well for the people that attack them.
Congressman Mike Garcia, thank you so much for calling in today and providing a little bit of measured response to some of these questions. And thank you for your leadership here of the 27th Congressional District. You will always be lifted up in terms of my prayers as well as our church. And Lord bless you as you serve out there on the Hill.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate it. Appreciate the prayers. We feel them, and I owe you a visit out there at the church for sure.
We'll see you soon, sir. God bless you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's good to have Mike Garcia with us today. We'll see you back here just a little bit on our closing segment here for Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. All right, we're back here for our final segment with you on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. It's good to have Congressman Garcia call in. And if you do not know who Representative Mike Johnson is, our new Speaker of the House, I want to give you a little flavor of his style. It's a little less flamboyant than someone like a Jim Jordan or someone else of his ilk, or a Matt Gaetz for that matter. But it's very measured, very principled. Here is a very short clip of Mike Johnson a couple of months ago talking in a hearing to Alejandro Mayorkas, our DHS secretary, who, of course, is an absolute feckless moron who needs to be ousted out of office, whatever. But here is Mike Johnson just excoriating him.
I've only got 25 seconds. I'll just say I don't have time for a question because you'll be elusive. But for the record, since we're stating things for the record, I've been in Congress 7 years. I think you're the most dishonest witness that has ever appeared before the Judiciary Committee. And I think I speak for a lot of my colleagues. This is such a frustrating exercise for us because our constituents want answers. They're tired of the open border. They're tired of people dying from fentanyl overdoses, and it's your fault. It's my time.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
No, there's no point of order in the middle of this. This is my opinion. I think it's shared by millions of American people.
Based on the
Please show no shame.
Based on the standard that the chairman said.
Okay, obviously we know the Dems there always want to cry foul when a good point is being made and it's being brought home. But Representative Mike Johnson, who is now the newly Speaker-elect, I think is going to be a great speaker. And so for those of you who are out there that are believers, I would encourage you to uplift him in prayer and ask that God would use him mightily. He is the third in line to the White House. There are two feckless people ahead of Mike Johnson. Oatmeal brains, Biden himself, and Kamala Harris, and Mike Johnson. It used to be Nancy Pelosi. Wow. But I'd encourage you to pray for him. Real quickly, before we come off the air today, I want to tell you a little bit about the insanity of the state of Oregon. Obviously, we are a blue state here in California. I know we all feel it every day. But we have a state to our north that is just as nuts as we are. And the state of Oregon has decided that learning in school is overrated, and of course, it's racist. In a unanimous vote, the Oregon Board of Education decided that basic mastery of things like reading, writing, and arithmetic, the three things that we're supposed to be teaching all students of every race, creed, or color, they're saying that the mastery of things like reading, writing, and math will no longer be a high school graduation requirement. This vote extended an existing policy put in place in 2020 until at least 2029. The reason? Listen to this. Here's the reason why they voted unanimously. The expectation of basic skills is putting undue stress and harm on students of color and other historically marginalized groups, or so says the Oregon State Board of Education. Folks, equality and equity are not the same things. Look them up. They're spelled differently. They're defined differently. And what's interesting is just how out of step these Board of Education people truly are. They are saying that this vote makes them look less racist or non-racist. Do they realize that this vote actually makes them racist? Because they are saying essentially that people of color and other historically marginalized groups just can't cut it. I mean, how ridiculous is that? But when you are a leftist and you can't think outside of your leftist bubble, this is the kind of rationale that you're going to come to. Folks, Rush Limbaugh, the great Rush Limbaugh, who died a couple years ago now and has left such an indelible mark on my thinking. He used to say that liberalism is a mental disorder. And you know what? I think that is more and more prophetic the more I see this ludicrous stuff happening in our country. Folks, the Oregon Board of Education is slighting all students, whether white or students of color. As we close today on Politics in the Pulpit, I just want to encourage you to please be the change that you yourself should want to be. Next week, November 1st, at the William S. Hart District's school meeting, we need you to show up. Be there. Speak up if you want to speak. If you don't want to speak, just be a body present. That's next Wednesday, November 1st, at the Hart School District meeting. We do have some friendly voices on the board, and we have a couple, or maybe at least one that is not very friendly. But folks, this issue of parental consent and keeping secrets from parents it's wrong. And folks, you need to be out there and be a voice for change. We'll catch you next week on Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station.